Welcome to the second lecture in our Van Gogh and the Arts series. Very grateful to the corporation SALT, S-A-L-T, that has provided so much of the information on Van Gogh for this particular series. Now again, the paintings will occur at the end in a link form that you can click on to see the painting, or simply type the title of the painting into your Google search bar and the painting will come up. And then as well, if you'd like a hard copy, we have a catalog of all of the paintings that you can see in the church office as well and take home with you. So the gospel lesson for today comes once again from the Gospel of Luke. This in a later chapter, chapter 13, verses 31 through 35. And what's interesting about this is it's the Pharisees coming to see Jesus. Now, normally we know from many of the stories in the Bible, when the Pharisees show up, they're trying to trick him. But in this case, they actually come with a warning to Jesus, and Jesus has a rather complex answer for them. Here's the gospel reading. Luke 13, verses 31 through 35. At that very hour, some Pharisees came and said to him, "Get away from here, for Herod wants to kill you." Jesus said to them, "Go and tell that fox for me, listen, I'm casting out demons and performing cures today and tomorrow, and on the third day I finish my work. Yet today, tomorrow, and the next day I must be on my way, because it is impossible for a prophet to be killed outside of Jerusalem. Jerusalem, Jerusalem, the city that kills the prophets and stones those who sent them to him. How often have I desired to gather your children together as a hen gathers her brood under her wings, but you were not willing. See, your house is left to you, and I tell you, you will not see me until the time comes when you say, 'Blessed is the one who comes in the name of the Lord.'" By 1888, Van Gogh had entered his most intense, prolific chapter, the period when he would create many of the masterpieces for which he is best known today. Among these are his sunflower pictures, flowers which for Van Gogh symbolize gratitude. He envisioned a kind of triptych with sunflower paintings flanking each side of a portrait of a woman holding a rope which she rocks a cradle with. The name of that center painting is called La Berceuse, or the Lullaby. So sunflower, woman with a rope in her hand, which is actually rocking a cradle, the lullaby, and more sunflowers. The threefold arrangement traditionally associated with an altarpiece. It is interesting to note that in our current time, sunflowers are the symbol of solidarity with Ukraine. On that central panel, La Berceuse, the lullaby, Vincent wrote to Theo, his brother, this: "The idea came to me to paint a picture in such a way that sailors, who are at once children and martyrs, seeing it in the cabin of their Icelandic fishing boat, would feel the old sense of being rocked come over them and remember their own lullabies." So as the sailors are in their cabins of their ship, and the ship is rocking back and forth with the water motion, Vincent van Gogh hoped that if they saw this picture, they would find comfort in feeling they were being rocked as they might have been rocked as a child. With this nautical vision and the triptych arrangement in mind, we may interpret La Berceuse as nothing less than a divine portrait, the loving mother who comforts and cares for us, an altarpiece for the ocean, and by extension, for all creation. In the passage from Luke, Jesus strikingly figures himself as a mother hen, gathering together her chicks under her wings. She longs to care for Jerusalem, even though Jerusalem has rejected him. He longs to gather them into God's sheltering love. In La Berceuse, the triptych, Van Gogh likewise envisions an overarching motherly love, gently rocking the cradle of humanity, singing a lullaby. And on each side, a vase of brilliant sunflowers, symbolizing gratitude, evoking both the glories of the fields outside and the sweet serenity of a home. A simple arrangement of flowers, boldly, beautifully, impossibly yellow. Accordingly, whenever we look at this painting, as countless thousands have now, it's in the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York City, we take up the position of a child in a cradle, rocking and listening and remembering home, like sailors out on an open, starlit sea. Now, if you wish, take a look at some other paintings of Van Gogh's. Complement these paintings with Van Gogh's Girl Kneeling in Front of a Cradle. In a letter to his brother Theo, Vincent wrote, "But if one feels the need of something grand, something infinite, something that makes one feel aware of God, one need not go far to find it. I think I see something deeper, more infinite, more eternal than the ocean in the expression of the eyes of a little baby when it wakes up in the morning and coos or laughs because it sees the sun shining on its cradle. If there is a ray from on high, perhaps one can find it there in the child in the cradle." So for our music selections today, the concept of love, the love of the mother rocking the cradle, came to mind. And during this time of Lent, one of the hymns that surfaces so frequently, and our choir just sang it last week as the anthem, is "What Wondrous Love Is This?" I never looked at it close enough, because I'm usually looking at the music notes, to realize that it's not really a question. It's a statement. What wondrous love is this, O my soul, O my soul? What wondrous love is this, O my soul? Oftentimes, the tune is just called Wondrous Love. It's a Christian folk hymn from the American South. The text was first published in 1811 during the Second Great Awakening, and its melody derived from a popular English ballad. Today, it is a widely known hymn included in hymnals of many Christian denominations. The hymn's lyrics were first published in Lynchburg, Virginia in 1811 in a camp meeting songbook. The songbook was titled "A General Selection of the Newest and Most Admired Hymns and Spiritual Songs Now in Use." The lyrics may also have been printed in a slightly different form in the 1811 book Hymns and Spiritual Songs, originally and selected, published in Lexington, Kentucky. In most early printings, the hymn's text was attributed to an anonymous author, though in 1848, in a hymnal called the Hesperian Harp, Methodist pastor from Oxford, Georgia, named Alexander Means was credited with the text. Most sources attribute the hymn's melody to the 1701 English song, The Ballad of Captain Kidd, which describes the exploits of pirate William Kidd, often misnamed Robert in the American versions of the ballad. The melody itself predates the Kidd usage, though, possibly by more than a century. In addition, at least a dozen popular songs were set to the same melody after 1701. In the early 1800s, when the lyrics to What Wondrous Love Is This were first published, hymnals typically lacked any musical notation. Camp meeting attendees during the Second Great Awakening would sing the hymns printed in these hymnals to a variety of popular melodies, including the Ballad of Captain Kidd, which was well known at the time. This is likely how the text and the melody came to be paired. The text and the melody were first published together in the appendix of the 1840 13th edition of the Southern Harmony, a book of shape note hymns compiled by William Walker. The three-part harmony printed in the Southern Harmony was arranged by James Christopher of Spartanburg, South Carolina. In a later printing of the hymn, William Walker noted that it was a very popular old Southern tune. So what I'd like to do now is to present What Wondrous Love twice. First on the piano, and then secondly, I'm going to go over to the organ and do an arrangement on the organ. And the piece I'm going to play on the organ is an arrangement of the tune by Gunter Kaluza. And he incorporated this into a collection of pieces called the Stations of the Cross. And this happens to be the fourth station where Jesus beholds his mother. Thinking of that cradle, Van Gogh's idea of sailors in their cabins in a ship and feeling the rocking motion and the comfort of that as a lullaby and being rocked as a child. The spiritual, he's got the whole world in his hands, came to mind for me. And as a spiritual, this song was probably around for a long time before it was ever written down. The song was first published in 1927 in a paper-bound hymnal called Spirituals Triumphant, Old and New. In 1933, Frank Warner collected the song from Sue Thomas while she sang the song in North Carolina. Frank Warner was an American folk art collector, singer, musician, and YMCA executive. He was born in April 1903 in Alabama and died in February 1978 in Long Island, New York. Frank Warner performed and introduced the spiritual to the American public throughout the 1940s and 50s. Other collectors also recorded the song. In 1941, Robert Sonkin, who was with the Library of Congress, recorded a version in Gee's Bend, Alabama. In 1958, English singer Laurie London and the Geoff Love Orchestra recorded the song. Their record became a gold record and became the first and of right now, the only gospel song to hit #1 on the US pop charts. A variety of other performers have also recorded the song. The song has made its way in part or whole into several films, including Tootsie, Roxanne, and Con Air. So here is a jazz version of He's Got the Whole World in His Hands that was arranged by Joel Rainey, who also arranged the piece that was commissioned for our 150th anniversary here at the Little Home Church. So I hope you'll enjoy a light version and a jazz version of He's Got the Whole World in His Hands. Going back to Van Gogh's triptych, there was Sunflower, La Berceuse, the woman rocking the cradle, and another sunflower. So I thought in music about what lullaby I could choose to put with this series. And of course, the most famous of all lullabies, Brahms' Lullaby, or the Weigenlied. Da 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 da. And then I thought about a very famous piano solo berceuse by Chopin. There are many that we could find in a lot of the Romantic composers' works. And I know it's Lent, but I still think we can have a little fun in Lent. So I chose something a little more contemporary and something to go with the jazz, He's Got the Whole World in His Hands. And I decided on the Lullaby of Birdland by George Shearing. It was written in 1952, and the lyrics were by George David Weiss. The title refers to the Birdland Jazz Club, named for Charlie Bird Parker. Shearing had started playing at the club, then known as the Click, in 1949, the same year it was renamed Birdland. He regarded the song highly enough to use it in the title of his autobiography, Lullaby of Birdland, the autobiography of George Shearing. When the owner of the club, Maurice Levy, arranged for radio station WJZ to use it for the broadcast of a regular show, he asked Shearing to record a theme song. Not caring for Levy's choice, Shearing offered to write one. After several futile weeks, Shearing leapt to his feet in the middle of the dinner, dashed to the piano, and wrote the whole song in 10 minutes. As he said later, I'm quoting, "It's not that I dashed something off in 10 minutes. It's 10 minutes plus umpteen years of being in the business." Weiss added lyrics later, and Sarah Vaughan recorded it in December 1954. The Blue Stars, a Parisian vocal group, took the song to number 16 in 1956. Bill Haley and his Comets recorded a version of Lullaby of Birdland Twist in 1962. Many, many recordings, including releases by Quincy Jones, Chaka Khan, Amy Winehouse, and Mel Torme. A little bit about Shearing. He was born in 1919 and he died in 2011. He was born in London to working-class parents and began studying piano at the age of 3 at the Linden Lodge School for the Blind. He was already highly regarded when he moved to the United States in 1947, where he formed his first quintet in 1949. He wrote over 400 songs, won numerous honors, and was knighted in 2007. He died in 2011 and will long be remembered for his wit and wordplay, his warmth and generosity, as well as his music. I have a personal story on George Shearing. Many of you probably watching this are familiar with the St. Charles Singers, one of the really great musical treasures of the Fox Valley. And Jeff Hunt, the director of the St. Charles Singers, commissioned George Shearing to write a set of sonnets, taking Shakespeare sonnets and doing a jazz version of Shakespeare sonnets for choir and a small little jazz ensemble, which Shearing did. John Rutter, the famous choral composer, came to the St. Charles Art and Music Festival in the early 2000s, and the piece was premiered at the Arcada Theater. Shearing played the performance. I was accompanist for the group at the time, and I had to play the rehearsal, which was very humbling to play George Shearing's works in front of George Shearing, particularly when you're not a jazz pianist. There was one other element to the day. As we worked in rehearsals and things, I got the courage up to ask Mr. Shearing if he would listen to a piano student of mine at the end of the rehearsal. And I wanted him to know that the piano student was blind, like he was. And he said, "I'll give him 5 minutes." And I said, "That's more than enough, thank you." Called the parents of my student, Michael. They showed up at the Arcada at the end of the rehearsal. I introduced them, and Michael sat down and started to play some of his own works. Shearing was enthralled and couldn't have been nicer. And after 5 minutes, I tried to end the session, keeping my end of the bargain, at which point George Shearing put me in my place and just said, "Sit down, Larry, we're going to work a while." And so he gave about 30 minutes of his time to Michael, this wonderful, talented blind student of mine, and it was a moment I'll always remember with George Shearing. So we'll end our session today with the Lullaby of Birdland, and then I'll come back over to this station here, and we'll close our session with a prayer. This will conclude our second in the Lenten series, Vincent van Gogh. I hope you've enjoyed it. Be sure to take a look at the photographs of the paintings when you get a chance. And let's close with a word of prayer. God of grace, thank you for the cradle of the world, for the lullaby of your love, and for the brilliant colors of creation. Shelter us under your wings, Mother God, and give us the strength to follow you always. Amen.